While vacationing with her family in Europe, one of the greatest things to happen to the industry was standing at just 11 inches tall in the window of a toy shop. Its name was the Lily doll, who we now refer to as Barbie. Barbie's creator, whom I refer to as one of the greatest female leaders of all time, was Ruth Handler. Despite some minor indiscrepancies later in her career, Ruth was always a leader to women, being one of the first founders and CEOs of a multi-million-dollar company. Born in 1916, Ruth was raised by her sister and brother-in-law and lived a different childhood than most of us know. By age 10, instead of playing, she was working part-time at her parents' pharmacy, being a soda jerk. She continued this job through high school, adding the lunch counter clerk at the pharmacy, as well as a part-time secretary position. After graduating high school, Ruth went on to enroll in college at the University of Denver, where she met Elliot Handler, who she later married in June of 1938. After marriage, Ruth and Elliot moved out to Los Angeles, where Ruth started working at Paramount, and Elliot worked at a lighting design company. Elliot also took classes at a local art school at night, where his ideas started to take flight. He came home one night to Ruth pitching his idea of creating things out of plexiglass and wood, and without missing a beat, Ruth immersed herself into marketing of his creations. At night, Elliot would create candle holders, ashtrays, and bookends, while Ruth would plan who to sell it to and lug it out in their old suitcase and sell it to local shops. Unfortunately, shortly after opening the business, Ruth was bedridden, pregnant with her first child, Barbara, and later bedridden also with her second child, Ken. Fortunately for Ruth, homemaker life was not for her. Luckily, she had a window and joined business with family friend Harold Matson and Elliot to form Mattel Creations. Mattel started out as a wooden picture frame company, with Ruth and Elliot back together again. Mattel went on to create some wonderful toys that we all know, such as the Jack in the Box, of course Barbie, and the Hot Wheels, just to name a few. By 1968, Ruth was sitting as the CEO of Mattel, with revenue soaring over $180 million. Unfortunately for Ruth, the 1970s weren't so good. Being diagnosed with breast cancer in early 1970, Ruth underwent an emergency mastectomy, leaving her with a life of pain. She also was indicted in late 1978 for fraud, being the CEO of Mattel. Luckily, Ruth didn't let this get her down. She became a spokesperson for women with breast cancer, speaking out, showing that these women aren't mutated, they're regular women that had a disease. By doing this, she created Nearly Me, a prosthetic that made women feel nearly me. Also, after her indictment and later conviction, Ruth was sentenced to community service. With this community service, she became chairman of Foundation for the People, and she did revolutionary work for boys, getting them back on the right track. As you can see, Ruth had an expansive career and did many things, and with that, she had many leadership approaches, the strongest of those being the trade approach, where she fell short as a servant leader. One example of her and her trade approach is when she created Nearly Me, the prosthetic for women that had mastectomies. Many people shut her down and told her she couldn't do it, but her self-confidence, her persistence, and her determination kept her going. Ruth went on to make so many women aware that it's okay at a time when you didn't talk about breast cancer, when you didn't talk about having mastectomies, when you were ashamed. She was able to show that you don't have to be anymore, leading women out of the darkness and back into life so they feel like women again. With such great things that she did with the trait leadership and Nearly Me as an approach, unfortunately, she fell short with servant leadership. When she was working with Mattel, she was known by her employees as a tyrant. She was very self-confident, very self-motivated, and there to serve the organization as well as herself. Many people remember her being very explicit with her executives, firing people on the spot, not there to serve others, but specifically the organization and herself, exemplifying maybe a little arrogance at times. In sum, Ruth will always be a great leader, Lacking in servant leadership and excelling in trait leadership, she has so many qualities to offer. Yes, some minor indiscrepancies happen throughout her career, but she will always be a role model to women, and she will always be what I would refer to as an excellent leader.